So you're very welcome along to our presentation this evening. It's part of Clare County Library's History Week, and it is a tribute to Joe Kenneally, and we call him Joe Kenneally, Child of 1921. So a lot of History Week this week, which is running all this week, is about history to do with the War of Independence, so everything to do with the centenary of that period. And while we were thinking this through ourselves in Cuimhneamh and Chláir and trying to figure out what way we would mark it, Francis came up with the great idea of why not focus on a person who was born in 1921, and Joe Keneally is the perfect person to that. And so through Joe's life, we get little glimpses. This is not a comprehensive look at anything in particular, but we get little glimpses of what life was like here in Ireland during those 100 years since 1921. I think I said in the publicity that went out that in many ways, Joe's life is an ordinary life. He's a farmer born into a large family on a small farm in the west of Ireland. His family was split apart by emigration. 8 of 15 of the siblings emigrated to the United States. And yet no life is ordinary. Joe's is an extraordinary life as well. He is a singer, he's a profoundly musical man, he's an artist, and the way he thinks about his life and his work and his music and his song and his dance is a very artistic way, and I think that becomes clear as you listen to the stories in the archive of Cuimhneamh and Chláir and the stories that other collectors have collected from Joe as well. So we're going to celebrate Joe tonight. He is at home. He has had a long and extremely healthy and extremely happy life. I dare to be so presumptuous and to say that about him. He's just out of hospital in recent weeks, however, and we wish him all the very, very best. And Joe, we all intend to model ourselves on you as we grow older as well, because you're an absolute shining example of how to live a simple life, how to be happy, and how to get the most out of it. So we're going to flash up a picture that was taken very recently of Joe. His birthday was on the 21st of July this year, and he turned 100 years of age, and that is him with the birthday cake there at home, looking fantastic. And we're going to see pictures as the night goes on of Joe as a young man, as a middle-aged man, as an older man as well. So we might kick off, actually, having said that, we're going to kick off with something that isn't even from the archive of Cuimhneamh and Chláir. I had the unenviable job of narrowing down what we would play tonight, because there's so much great stuff of Joe talking and singing and so on. Our archive is predominantly audio, of course, but there's some beautiful video of Joe as well. And this piece that we're going to start with was made by John Casey, and it was made when Joe was 90 years of age, or maybe even 89 years of age, back in 2010 in Comfort's Bar in Doonbeg. And Joe is being interviewed by Joe Rinn, the inimitable Joe Rinn, who's not on camera, but you can hear his witty repartee and his voice on this. And he's talking about a song, I call it My Sweet County Clare. There may be other names for that song as well. So Joe Keneally is introducing the song. It was written by his uncle. There's a bit of chat before and after, and I think this video, more than anything else, gives you a very strong sense of the character of Joe Keneally. So with massive thanks to John Casey, and we'll be chatting to John Casey later on, we'll play you this video now.
Did you meet Robbie before tonight?
I met him in 1956 at the first flag tour in Ireland.
And Robbie has a song written about that as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you often have that.
Yeah. And Robbie was up very high in some hotel the same night, and he was singing a nice summer song. for Kieran McMahon at the bottom of Daniel O'Connell statue at 6 o'clock in the morning.
In 1956.
I think it's 1956. First flat show.
What time of the year would that be? Was it August?
I know me.
Or June?
I think it was in the May or June. Yes.
If it was August, I might have been in it, but if it was May, I wasn't in it. I was born in June 1956. That's why I just wanted to establish that. Now, Joe, can you remember what song did you sing at the Bush of Daniel O'Connell at 6 o'clock in the morning? What was it?
Well, it was a song about countries that I tell you. It was a song about two fellas that went in that club.
Yes.
And when they were there, they dreamt that they saw all those places in County Clare, and one of the men happened to be my uncle. And that would be not too many years after the famine.
Okay. What was that uncle's name?
Tom Keneally.
Tom Keneally.
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 Yes.
It's a different to the name Keneally, is it? Or is it our slang?
And K, we're K-E-N-N-E-R.
Yes. I'm proud of it.
Oh, yes.
And why not?
Why hardly worked out why
Changing. No. Anyway, Joe, what song will you give us now?
I'll give you that one.
If you can think of it, that would be lovely. So put your hands together for Joe Keneally.
Last night, as I dreamt of my own banner county, I saw many scenes that were charming and where there is no spot so rich with nature's fair bounty, and the home of my childhood, my sweet County Clare. I saw in that pleasant dream the famed Kilshanny stream, the famed cliffs of Moher tower high in the air. The stone barns, healing well, Chláir, Callan, hills and dells, view which delights in my sweet County Clare. I saw Kilshanny, Hinch, Kilfenora, Cuimhneamh, Kilrush, and the famed Killalone. The caves of Kilshanny, the rules of King Cora, the birthplace and palace of King Brian. The Ferguson Lake in Cuimhneamh, Market and Corofin. Bonrashi Castle, so picturesque and fair. Clare Abbey, artistic wall, and Geraldine's diamond fall. I saw in her beauty my sweet County Clare. I saw Milton, Malbersley, Velvedune, Harsley, Carn, Cuimhneamh, and the Lake of Kin. O Clare's mills, not better than Kilbaham, the falls of Dunas and the Lake of Turin. Cuimhneamh and Bran's Bell, Kildysart and Loophill, Innis, Clare Castle and O'Connell Square. The statue of the Liberator then, that staring immortal man, loved and revered in my sweet County Clare.
Amen.
But when I awoke and around me glancing, I saw through my window the morning sunbeam. Alas, I was far from those scenes so entrancing. I found to my sorrow that was only a dream. An exile was he once more, far from my native shore. Our rapture and gladness had changed to despair. was then I cursed my Saxon fall, which caused me such grief and woe, and forced me to leave you, my sweet county Clare.
Lovely. Joe, if we may ask another question now, I don't like asking people what age are they, but what age were you in 1956?
I want to be going into a cave, no one to rehearse it.
Would you want a calculator?
Yeah. I would, and I would move through the calculator.
Yes, well, you're good at singing and you'll have a great memory for songs and words. And that was a long song and a beautiful song. So put your hands together for Joe Keneally. I don't need any calculator for that year, as I said, that was the year I was born.
I got it.
But if it was a few years after, I'd still need the calculator, because I went to best at sums.
Maybe you don't like to tell your age.
But sure, haven't I taught nearly when I said I was born in 1950?
Oh, that is Joe Keneally and Joe Rinn, two Joes in flying form there. Apologies if my sound is breaking up a tiny bit. Apparently it is. I live in Fecal and we can't help it in Fecal, so I'll do my best. And thanks again to John Casey. And John, I'm going to come to you after the next piece that we're going to listen to, so you can be warming up your voice there if indeed you are in the room at the moment. The next piece that I want us to listen to is a recording done for Cuimhneamh and Chláir by Cormac McCarthy, and it was done in 2011, I think it was. Cormac will correct me anyway. So that would be 10 years ago when he went to visit Joe and Mary in their home. And a big feature of interviewing Joe is that often Mary Keneally is there as well, and with some wonderful photos of Mary as well. And she made a huge contribution to these interviews and to Joe's life indeed, and that'll become more apparent as the night goes on. But this piece, I thought it really kind of situates what life was like for somebody born in 1921 and living through the early centuries of this year, because Joe is talking here, and Mary, about the really big families that they were born into and that lived in that area. And even though my generation also grew up with big families, it is quite sobering to listen to the kind of numbers that they're talking about there. So let's take a listen to Joe and Mary talking about the size of the families.
Everything was 15.
15.
15. And there was more houses around. There were 11 and 12 and 13. And a lot of them. There was 42 children going to Kilshanny school. I haven't heard my father saying, from 3 houses. And then 3 houses, then they were only just picked out, and how many big families were all around, but it didn't reach the 15. There were a couple of families where there was 21. Down in, did you hear that? Bang, Willie Casey, there was boxing there a while ago. Have you ever followed? He was one of 23 or 4 that were itinerants.
And so there was 15 children, your mother and your father. And in the census, it said that your aunt lived here as well.
My aunt lived here, yeah.
Yeah. And how big would the house have been?
Do you see the above there now? It's a copy of it. Do you see the above there?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah. Just this image of that, no.
Okay.
That's what it was, no. There was 2 rooms and a kitchen, that was all. The kitchen was here, and a room there, and a room there.
And you know, Cormac in Mountain. There was so many, 15 or 16 of us together in the house.
Oh yeah, and when Mary came here, we eloped. And we were, I don't know how many houses. We were in a house down in Ballingaddy here in Diamond for 12 months. The man or his son then, that owned the house, Willie Murphy, the TD, it's his house, and he was living in Diamond. His son got an orphan of getting married 12 months after. We had to get out of that house. We came to a house near Mary's home place over there in Kettleduff. And another son took a notion after 12 months. We had to get out of that house. We came into an old house and that was wrecked and no one lived in it for a long time. It wasn't even, the touch was awful bad in it. And I touched it. And we were living there for a while. And that place was sold in. And my father said, we'd be going around the country no longer. You'd come in here. And there was enough here.
There were 6 here. We had 7 children and 2 wars, and there were 6 besides.
Oh,
In a
yeah.
3-roomed house.
Yeah, yes,
Yes,
that's
sir.
right. No.
2 rooms and a room there, and the tile. There was no toilet that time on there.
I don't know what toilet, there wasn't a toilet in any house.
No.
No, no running water, not anything like that. There was not. God, you think if someone spoke of a toilet here at that time when we were young, you waste space. That's it, no. That's what's
Mother
to
and father were here and they were young, and he had 2 brothers here, and there was 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I never know whether the thing has frozen or whether it's time for me to come back in. Isn't that an astonishing piece? It just really is, just to think about the size of the houses and the size of the families and how our demands have changed so much in the meantime. And the laugh they get out of telling us about it as well, which is really interesting. I don't know if any of the Keneallys want to come in. That photograph was a wedding photograph, wasn't it, of Joe and Mary? Does anybody want to come in and identify who the others are in that picture? Only if you want to. I won't see people waving hands or anything, so somebody can alert me if someone wants to come in, and otherwise we can move on. I wanted. Oh,
I thought I'd Cormac here. How are you? You know what?
You did that interview.
It just brings back such lovely memories. And whilst Joe in himself is an absolute gentleman, what was really lovely to hear was Mary's voice. And she's such a loss since she passed away. And I remember calling up, I think it was 2 or 3 times. Firstly, I'd go home with so much food, we'd put it into the freezer. Mary gave me any amount of tart and duck breasts and the whole lot. But she was a font of knowledge and lore herself. And what always pained me was she'd always decide to talk about it when the recorder was off. And I think that's one story which I thought was brilliant. Joe had told me how he got a cure for burns because he'd licked a man-eater lizard from the bog. So if you lick its belly, you get the cure for burns. And a short while later, there was a bad house fire quite close to them, and a little girl got badly burnt. And he was asked, would he go up? And he was a little bit unsure. And then he told me, he goes, Joe, I don't know, would I put any stock in that anyway? And Mary piped up and she goes, now, Joe, I burnt my hand with the kettle a couple of weeks ago, and you licked the burn, and it felt much better afterwards. And I just thought, you know, if you're that close as husband and wife at that age, it's something definitely to aspire to. So it was an absolute privilege to visit them. They were a wonderful couple, and Joe was an absolute gentleman.
Yeah, it was always great fun in that house. And I remember I actually have Mary's recipe for plum pudding, which comes out at Christmas time, because it was November when I was up there, and she was making plum pudding at the time. So I came away with the plum pudding recipe. Anyway, I'm very proud of that one too. Is John Casey in the room? If he is, could somebody bring him to my attention? Because I'd love to talk to John about that previous video that we looked at. Are you around, John? I know there's a couple of Johns in the room, but maybe John Casey isn't in yet. Anyway, if John does come into the room, somebody can...
Paula, you hear me?
Yeah?
I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
just trying to get it. You were asking her a while ago who was in Dada's, we call him Dada now, so ignore me.
Okay.
We would call him Dada. So in his wedding photo, there's himself and Mary. We couldn't see it when it was up on the screen. We had to just put on our phone instead because it's just not working on our laptop for some reason. But
Okay.
so there's Dada, there's Mary, there's Mary's brother and his wife, and then I think there is it two of Dada's? There's one of Dada's brothers in it, and I'm not sure the other one.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'd have to see the photo now in person again.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, we'll get the photo to you, and thanks a million. What was he like? What is he like as a grandfather? Is he great crack?
Oh, he's amazing. He's so funny. We love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen his interactions with other people's children and grandchildren, and he just seems to really light up when there are kids in the room. So
Yeah,
you
oh,
must,
up like younger kids actually, especially. Yeah, like he's able to engage with all friend or age groups, which is brilliant. Like, so yeah, he's very engaging with anyone, no matter what age they are. He's always well able to interact with them anyways. He's always able to have a conversation with people.
yeah.
Oh yeah, Dad said in the photo as well, we just texted Dad, Dad's having issues getting connected. But Jim is the other person in the photograph, who's one of the Kellys that lived up the road from Joe.
Dada's brother
Dada's
Jim,
brother Jim, and then
and
one of the Kellys.
the neighbours up the road.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And all
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But they're not there, the Kellys that were up the road. So yeah.
We have a few more pictures of Joe and Mary coming up in the course of the night, and they always make a fine couple in photographs as well. So it's really nice.
There you
Yeah.
go, couple.
Thanks a million, Nicola. When you say your dad is having trouble connecting, is that Joe? Your dad?
Yeah, Joe is having problems connecting.
Okay, grand. You might let us know when he does connect, because I told him I wouldn't let him away for the night without chatting to us as well. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well,
I see John. Yeah? Okay, I see John Casey there now. Sorry, my own connection is a tiny bit dodgy, so forgive me. John and Breed Casey, you're welcome along. How are you doing? We'll have to unmute John there. Oh, hi, John, and hi, Breed. How are you doing? And thanks a million, John, for that piece of video. I'd say you had a lot of fun making video that night in Comerfords.
Wait, that's the fun every night we were with Joe. It's an emotional night, I can tell you that. It's a wonderful night, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a great tribute to Joe.
Joe loved, I always felt that he loved, he's a singer, he's an artist. He loved to perform as well. So he must have really, you know, and he's a man who could have had a massive national audience for his songs had he chosen so when he was a younger man. But you can see that as an older man, he really enjoyed singing to an audience. So did he get a kick out of those nights that you had in Dinny Jim's and in Comerfords? Did he look forward to them?
Oh, he was the first to arrive at the Jim's. Himself and Robbie were the first to arrive, and he had a wonderful sense of humour. And I don't know if you know, but in 40 years ago, himself and Mary went to go see O'Connor's in Doolin every night in the Massey Ferguson tractor.
I didn't know.
And that is true, yeah. And he loved music so much.
Oh, and you can hear that in his singing voice as well. He told me that he lilted a lot for dancers. If the musicians were coming late to a house dance, for instance, he'd be brought up to lilt. And he lilted a couple of tunes for me when I was recording him. And he's just full of dance music as well as full of songs, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he was full of music. Even when you're with him, and if somebody else came in, you were talking, Joe take off lilting, he'd be lilted away to himself.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just want to tell you, one night I was talking to him, and I said, Joe, I said, did you ever hear Tom Linehan singing The Farmer Michael Hayes? And he said, I heard him at the Flag Yawn in Kilrush. Once, he said, I don't know how many years, but I don't know the song. And the next thing he started off lilting the air of the song, and it was like listening to Tom Linehan. Unbelievable. And that's only about 3 years ago.
Yeah. He had has a phenomenal head for songs, and in one of the pieces that's coming up, he describes how he learns a song, so it might throw some light on how he was able to sing that song so perfectly for you. I think thanks a million, John, and thanks, Breed, for being with us tonight. I'm going to move on to the next piece of video now, because I think that again it really highlights an aspect of life in Ireland in that post-War of Independence era, in the kind of early and middle years of the 20th century in Ireland. And emigration, of course, is a huge element of everybody's life. And Joe talks here about his brothers and sisters and what the ritual was when they emigrated. There were 15 of them in the family, and 8 of them left and lived in America. Joe was the very youngest. So when he was born, I think the oldest would have been maybe 20 or something years older than him. So I don't even know how well he knew his older brothers and sisters, because he would have been very young when they emigrated. But here he tells us about that process.
You'd hate to be in the house of modern, they'd be gone. Through the same as they were going out in the car. It was. Because a lot of them didn't come home again, the creditors. And they had nothing going on, to make the story worse. And the father and mother had compassion for them. They had nothing to give them. See, they had this terrible compassion for them, so.
And would they have the American way the night before they'd go?
Oh, God, they would. They'd go to be all right until they'd be going home in the night, and that's the time. No, they'd be dancing and singing and music there all night, so whenever they'd be going. And they'd come the neighbours, then they'd come again in the morning. So the house and sake, they'd be going off to the station, which.
And from there on to Cork and Cove, Queenstown.
Yeah, you'd have to go first to Cove for Queenstown, I suppose they were calling it that time. You have to go there for an examination first. And then if we passed, you'd be called. What did I tell you that the boys were going 1929? Not to do, my mother wrote to go over to the Cliffs of Moher to see the ship by the name of the City, the board that had blown Queenstown. And that were going up into Galway to take more passengers above. And she knew there was to be passing up beyond. And we went over. I was young, and an elder brother was driving a horse and cycle, and she went with her. We saw the spick that are going out on the other side of Arden Island. So we might as well have remained at home. But it did a good, I suppose, to see the last glimpse. All I say was night that went from here, I suppose as good as ever left the shores of Ireland anyway. Now, knowing what they sent home. They sent home money to bring out the next one and the next one and the next one again. Parcels in. Every birthday there was money sent. And sure, the class that they hadn't very big earning either. Or they weren't the just ones that went now. They went in 1929, I think I was telling you that before. And the first show, that was the year the Wall Street crash. Things were bad. They got awful bad. And then to there was bringing them out. To God, what happened? But didn't she die? And then in the way out, they had no one in the world before them. One of them got a job digging graves, and another one got a job shoveling coal in a coal yard or something. The girls in the winch were down their knees scrubbing. Oh, they earned their time for small money, I'm telling you. They did. And they never forgot the homes. Oh, and they used to come home regular. All of our lads came home except one.
Yeah. And did you ever think, now, how many of your family went to America?
Oh, there's Pap, Michael, John, Pap and Michael, John, Tom, May and Neil, and Susan. Yeah, but that's and Peg and May I did.
So that's the first piece. That was a little feature that I put together from Francis Madigan's interview with Joe Keneally. Francis is here tonight as well. And I love the sound of the ticking clock, actually, as a backdrop to that interview. And the photograph there that you saw was a photograph taken when some of his older brothers and sisters came home from America for summer holidays. I was really interested in the fact that he said that all of his family, all the brothers and sisters, except for maybe one of them, who went there, came back to visit, because that wasn't always the case. Very often families broke up completely and didn't have that much contact with each other again after they'd emigrated. But he was able to name off all of his brothers and sisters. I also find really moving in that piece, in fact, I get a bit shaky when I think about it, the fact that the brother went down to Queenstown Cove to get on the boat, and that boat then travelled right around the south coast of Ireland, up the west coast of Ireland, past the cliffs of Moher, and up to Galway to take on passengers. So it was probably a day or two later, after they'd had the American wake, after they'd put them on the bus or the coach or the whatever it was that was taking them down to Cork. A few days after that, the ship would have passed the cliffs again, and his mother was so desperate to get a last view that she got another of her sons to drive her to the cliffs, stand on the cliffs and watch that tiny little speck, as Joe said, you know, going out the other side of the Aran Islands. I just find that incredible. Anyway, Joe is a singer, first and foremost. He's a wonderful teller of tales. He's wonderful company. The way he turns a phrase when he's talking is fantastic. But he regards himself, I think, primarily as a singer. And singing is something that just bubbles up and bursts out through him. And we've all recorded Joe singing as an older man, but Tom Munnelly recorded Joe for the Department of Irish Folklore in UCD, or now the National Folklore Collection it's called. And Joe was a much younger man when he did those recordings. And the National Folklore Collection have given us permission to use those recordings tonight. So there's one piece I want to play for you, and it is Joe singing Farewell Lovely Mary. It's only about 2 minutes long. This would have been made in the 1970s, so Joe was 50 years younger, so he would have been around 50. But if there's any singers in the room, you'll really appreciate this. Everybody will appreciate it. He just has a wonderful flowing musical voice. So let's listen to him.
Farewell, lovely Mary, I'm now going to leave you. To the Star West Indies, our long course we'll steer. I know very well, oh, my long absence will grieve you. I'll be with you, lovely Mary, in the spring of the year. Don't my long absence be any trouble to you, love, or any strange notion rolling through your mind. For although we are parted, we'll be true and loyal hearted. Fair again, I return, we will think of all times. Our big ship is sailing, lovely Mary is wailing. Only little white bosom, so the topmast cannot go. Your delicate body, strong winds can't endure love. Stay at home, lovely Mary, so the seas do not go. I'll dress like a sailor, my love, I'll go with you. In the midst of all danger, I'll stand as your friend. If any cold breeze or strong wind blow upon you, I'll be with you, lovely Mary, and obey your command. Our big ship is sailing, lovely Mary is wailing. Only little white bosom, so the topmast cannot go. Your delicate body, strong wind can't endure love. said, home, lovely Mary, so the sea's done not gone.
The wonderful voice of Joe Keneally there is absolutely beautiful, flawless singing voice. Now, I'm in a funny position here. I can only see my own mug on the screen and the video is gone from me, but I'm assuming that you can all hear me. If not, Caroline will come and save me. And I'm going to go to Linda now, if that's okay, because Linda has been keeping an eye on the chat, and I think there's quite a few messages coming in through the chat. So I might ask Linda to summarize some of those and to bring them into the room for us. Is that okay, Linda?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me there?
I can hear you, just can't see
Okay.
you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'd just like to say hello to all these people from America and Australia. We'd like to say hello to Michelle Bewley. Greetings from Buffalo, New York. It's great to say a name like that. We haven't traveled in a while. From Lynn Macy from Queensland, Australia. I presume some of these people are relations. And then we have hello from the west coast of US from Joe's grandniece. Thanks for doing this, Helen. And the next people are, hi, Caroline, Joe's granddaughter and Alex, great granddaughter here. Thanks, Paula. We were here in Cluny. Oh, they're Cluny. Okay, hi all, Nancy and Claire, Joe's niece and grandniece here in North London. Hello to London. Hi, fam. Greetings from New Brunswick, Canada. Welcome, Lynn. Pauline Keneally's Joe's granddaughter, and here with my husband, Lawrence Mazzarol. Sorry about the pronunciation. Hi, Eileen and Kathleen Keneally, Joe's nieces from Canton, USA. And that seems to be, we just needed to say, don't see anyone there? Yep, that's it, yep. And we have to say hello to Liam Shortall, local, because he's at everything.
Good man, Liam, and great to hear of Joe's extended family. And I suppose with 8 siblings having emigrated to America, it's no surprise that there are cousins all over the place, and just we're delighted that you've joined tonight. Now, I'm going to go, I think, back to another piece on immigration this time. Well, actually, before I do that, I want to say a special thanks to Christor McCorhig from the National Folklore Collection, who okayed us to use those lovely recordings of Joe as a younger singer. And I'm going to go back to a piece that I record. No, did I do it? No, I think Francis recorded it, and then I delved into the archive and made this little feature. So I actually forgot to edit out my voice at one point. I wanted it to be just Joe and Mary talking, but I think my little voice pops up in it. So the context there is that I was doing a piece, maybe a 7 or 8 minutes piece on immigration generally, and I had a couple of links in it. So I think one of them is left in. But Joe has been chatting to Francis for this piece, and they've been talking about the family emigrating, and it's clear that he wants to sing. And he kind of drops the heavy hint to Francis, and she picks it up gamely and gets him to sing one of our great immigration songs. The picture that you're going to see, I think, is of Joe and Mary. And it'll be obvious towards the end of this piece why Mary is in this picture with Joe, because he really has something very beautiful to say. So have a listen to this.
There was a lot of them songs were about immigration songs that day. Not one. One. Ye lads and lasses, ye passers, hear those words I'm going to say. How the people of Ireland are immigrating in thousands to America. Oh yes, they are bound for a foreign nation. In their own land they can't stand. They put their foot on board. They say they're bound for a Yankee land. Or half of the gallant sons of Erin. I can say that badly, you know, and if I was singing it, I could sing it better.
Maybe you'd sing it. Will you sing it all together?
So maybe you want to have the door open in case you'd be running when you hear me.
No, okay. Well, you might as well sing it for us now.
Yeah, lads and lasses, as you pass us, hear the words I'm going to say. How the people of Ireland are immigrating in thousands to America. Oh yes, they're bound for a foreign nation, and their own land they can stand. When they put their foot on board, they say they're bound for a Yankee land. Hurrah for the gallant sons of Erin, her fair daughters are gone away. Every day they're immigrating in thousands to America.
As I listen now to this song, it strikes me how it's also apt. If I replace America with Canada or Australia, that song might as well be about Ireland today.
But if the old girls continue going from the land they love so dear, any man that isn't married, the wife he'll get next year. For it's the best of them that scorn to seek their fortune far away. And it was rack rent and cruel and laws drove them all across the sea. For the gallant sons of Erin, her fair daughters are gone away. Every day they're immigrating in thousands to America.
Well, that was lovely. Well done.
Mine's 93rd year.
Fair play to you. Fair play to you. And where did you learn that song, Joe?
They were here in the house. They were here in the house. My grandmother was lynched from Clare and Cuimhneamh, one of the lynches. And she came here soon after the family year. She was a noted singer.
And did you ever think yourself about going to America?
I didn't, I suppose, because I knew well that I'd break my father's heart if I went to America. I know the value he had in me.
Were you the youngest?
I was the youngest. And we eloped when we got married. And he was the only one I told.
Yes.
And that's strange, you know. He was laying out something. Well, I said, you'll have to be laying out for some other one, I said. And that is now how Stein coming in. He asked me why. Is he thinking of going away? Well, I said, no, I said, I'm thinking of getting married. He asked me who, I said. He phoned off with her anyway. That's one thing. He knew will she be coming here. And I hope we don't go off in any wild goose chase, he said. So I said, if I had any few pounds I stepped out, he said, oh, I knew I was a great worker. Any kind of work. I could build, I could do anything. I could touch a house. I did it all. I wasn't afraid of that anyway. So I started out anyway, we got married. Went in the house belonged to William Murphy Blood and Ballingetty. We were there then for a while until we came in here. That was the history, you know. And thanks be to God, that's 66 years, I suppose, ago. And I wished I was with her for 66 more.
Isn't that lovely to hear?
Well, then you would hear that. Then.
You were blessed.
Blessed, the grandest character you would live with.
That's kind of my ideal for life, you know, is that people would talk about each other like that in a relationship. I think it's just amazing. I would love to call on some of the family maybe to chat about Joe and Mary and about that aspect of their lives together. I have a little difficulty with the connection at the moment, so I'm going to suggest that I go on to the next piece. And then maybe one of the grandchildren or one of Joe's sons or daughters might like to come on and chat a little bit afterwards, and I'll hopefully have fixed what I'm able to see on screen in the meantime. The next piece, though, it's back to Joe, and I think, was it John that said earlier about, Joe and his singing and how he sang that song, Farmer Michael Hayes, even though he didn't have it right, he was able to reproduce it perfectly. And in this piece, it was an interview I did with him in 2012. I think myself and Eugene Lamb and Paddy Williams had a gorgeous night up in with Joe and Mary at the time, and the other members of the family as well. And I know I actually was reading my notes about that interview today, and I had written to myself that I had something like 4 hours recorded, and that it was the longest time I had ever sat with anybody and recorded them, but that Joe just seemed to be in fantastic form all night. So we stayed like way beyond what we should have stayed with somebody in their early 90s. And I believe that Father Dennis Crosby went visiting the next day, and Joe wasn't able to get out of bed. He was so exhausted after the night. So apologies to everybody involved for that. But he talks here about how he learned songs. He said he got a lot of songs from his aunt. So I begin by asking him how he learned them from her. Where would you have picked up the songs? I mean, would you have gone up to her house, or would it have been?
And she'd sing it and I'd read it. Or I'd write it and I'd have it up before I come home. And I went off up to Torpy's house, myself and a neighbour here. And if I got a song from him, I'd write it above. And we had no lamp or anything or Willens either that time across the land in the mountain. I'd open my frock and he'd open his frock and we'd crack matches, and the line I wouldn't have off, I'd have the song off when I'd come home. They say who wrote a song, so the quickest way you learn it. It is.
So you'd be singing it on the way home?
Oh, singing it and singing it going to bed and singing it getting up. I just never stop with salmon. Anything I'm doing. And I thought before that I wouldn't have a song at all. No, we'd have them all forgotten. I have a lot of them forgotten anyway.
And would people have had a lot of time for the songs, we'll say, at
so
these
when
house
they
dances?
get tired of dancing then, you see, they'd be singing then. When they be tired, oh, then it wouldn't be until to be time to go home by rights.
You'd get called in then, would you?
You would, everyone, then anyone that'd be any good for singing, that they'd be asked to sing, sure.
And would there have been many singers around?
Torpy was one. There wasn't, I could tell you that there wasn't many singers. No, the Clothies, no, there were. Now the Russells, I never heard them. Oh, except Michael. Michael used sing that time, though.
And would they have had the songs that you had, Joe, or would they have had a different?
No, they hadn't. Well, I had songs that they never had heard, so. And people like to hear them songs all the same.
They do.
They do.
There was a lad of honor, lad he was of a high degree. He put his foot on board a vessel and said strange countries he would go and see him. He was blown east and he was blown west until he was blown to a Turkish shore, where he was taken a prisoner made of and could not leave it for evermore. Now, a Turkish king had one only daughter, a charming beauty she seemed to be. She stole the jail keys from her father's parlour and vowed Lord Beckham she would go and see him. Do you own houses, land or cattle, or have you money of a high degree? What would you give to a Turkish lady that's out of prison or set you free? Oh, I have houses, land and cattle, and plenty money of a high degree. I'd give them all to a Turkish lady that's out of prison or sets me free. Then 7 years they made a promise, and 14 more to make it strong. He's away with no other woman, or she's away with no other man. Then 7 years being past and over, and 14 more makes 21. She bundled up all her gold and treasure, and vowed Lord Beckham she would seek for. When she came to Lord Beckham's castle, she stepped up boldly and drew a string. And out then came a neat young porter, as you act so bold, miss, you can't get in. Is this so, is this Lord Beckham's castle, or is the Lord himself within? This is Lord Beckham's castle, and this very night he brought his new bride in. Go up to Lord Beckham's parlour, and in your hand all some cakes and wine. He not to forget the fair Turkish lady that released him out of his close confine. Then she went up to Lord Beckham's parlour, and in her hand, and threw herself on her bended knees, saying, I'm 7 years in your father's castle, and 14 more in your father's court. And the fairest lady that was ever mentioned is waiting for you at her own hall door. On her forefinger she wears a gold ring, and on her middle one she wears 3. And round her body a golden bracelet that would buy your holdings and castle free. Then he rose up from his new bright side, his sword and scabbard he broken free, saying, I'd give my life and my way of living if Betsy Wise came to visit me. Then he went down to his own hall door, and in his arms took Betsy Wise, saying, you're welcome here, my heart and darling, it's better late than during life. The new bride's mother being in the corner, an angry high she seemed to be, saying, are you going to forsake my only daughter and leave the burden of her to me? Oh, she's not the best, or she's not the worst, she's not the fairest or dearest to me. She came here on a horse and saddle, and I sent her home on the coach and tree.
The great singing voice there of Joe Keneally. And that song, Lord Baker, is a very, very old song. One of the oldest of the English language songs in the tradition. And Joe said in the interview before that he had songs that nobody else had. And that is so true. I mean, it's incredible within the County Clare singing tradition. The kind of songs that Joe was singing, very few other people were singing, and hardly anybody was singing them as late as the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and on into the 20s. And I think it was partly because, well, he is 100 years old now, but also because he was the youngest of his family. I think he told me when I was interviewing him, and he was around 93 at the time, he told me that the oldest of his siblings would have been 115 had they lived at the time. So you can add on another 9 years to that. So like Joe's oldest brother would be around 124 now. So you can see that they stretch back right well over a century. And if that older brother, for instance, one of those brothers who wrote that song about my sweet County Clare, if they were listening to songs by their grandparents, then you can add another 80 years onto that, you know, and suddenly you're back the guts of 2 centuries within a span of a family. It's incredible to think about. And I think that's partly why Joe has those really, really old songs, and that allied to his artistic obsessiveness, that he managed to learn them and hold on to them. I still have this view of myself. I know everything's working well for everybody else, but because I can only see myself, I'm a bit nervous about calling on other people. But is there anyone from the Keneally family who'd like to step in and chat a little bit? Especially that I don't want to leave that lovely comment that Joe made about Mary uncommented on. If there's anyone in the family that wants to step in and chat about their relationship. One of my own team can tell me if there's anybody there. If there isn't, and you can shout at me actually rather than sending me texts or anything, because I can hear ye, I just can't see ye. If there isn't anyone who'd like to jump in, I'm happy. Yeah.
Hi. So actually, it's coming up under a different name. My name is Pauline. I'm not sure if you can see me.
I can't, but probably everyone else can. Hi, Pauline. How are you? Are you
Yeah,
calling
hi,
me?
nice to see you. I'm the granddaughter actually that's in Canada. My name is Pauline. It's coming up under a different name because it's a different, couldn't get on my phone.
No worries.
But yeah, my grandfather, my sisters are there. They're in Dublin now, but he had this great relationship with my grandmother, Mary. And my fondest memory is that he used to always come, like we went to school in Kilshanny National School. We lived right beside them. And he used to come and pick us up in his tractor in Zetter, and we'd be all sitting in the box. We'd be waiting for him to come along, and we'd be sitting in the box. And that's how I learned to drive. Actually, he showed us how to drive in the Zetter. And meanwhile, my father was not super happy because he was. Well, I'm sure he's listening now, but he wasn't super happy because he was not wanting us to drive so early. And my grandfather was showing us how to drive in the tractor. So I remember going up and down the road with him, and then from there. On Sundays, we used to, myself and my grandfather, my sisters, we used to go for drives. We used to always say, would you go for a drive with us? And he would come with us in the car, and we'd go just for a drive around the locale, and he'd be telling us all these stories in the car, great talking to us about going up to where his mother would see the bog, and he'd tell us all the stories about the bog running, and just great. So yeah, I'll leave it off to Caroline now if she likes. And
thanks a
again for
million,
doing that.
Pauline. Thank you, Pauline, for that. Actually, we did that story about the bog running was on our list. We just couldn't fit it all in tonight.
No,
but it is,
I understand.
It's an
Absolutely.
amazing story. Yeah, it is, and we will get to it another time.
Yeah,
Is there?
and just
Yeah, go
sorry,
on.
I'll leave it then. Thank you.
Okay, Pauline. Thanks a million. Did you say Caroline might want to come in? No. Okay, no worries.
Hello.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can see me, Paula.
Yeah, no, don't worry about me. I can't see anybody, but I can hear you, and I'm a radio person, so that's grand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, sorry, there's all sorts of messages coming up here. Sorry now. Oh, there I am. Yeah, perfect. I'm Caroline, Joe's granddaughter. So, yeah, I would just have very happy memories from Kilshanny, you know. My fondest memories would be from there, and always kind of maybe sitting out in the evening watching the sunset over Lahenshi. You had a great view of that, like, and just doing the hay with them, and the cocks of hay they were called back then, you know, and walking with Mary down to a place called Bullawalla, bringing down the tea and the sandwiches and in the bags, you know. You'd walk a couple of miles down, like all the men from the neighboring farms would come and help out on, you know, saving the heyday and all that, like. But they had a beautiful relationship, you know. There was never, they were always just happy. There was never cross words or anything like that. It was just a really happy house, and just all the grandkids used to be there, and we used to stay there, and we'd be crying when you see your parents coming up the road at the butt of the hill, as they call it. You'd see them coming and you'd be crying. You wouldn't want to be going home on the Sunday when it would be time to go home. And in fact, my sister loved going up there so much. She used to take, I think at the time it was called the post bus, and it used to go the whole way around the country, like, and over to Kilshanny, and she'd walk from Kilshanny post office all the way over to the home house, you know. But no, they were great people, and I always remember that story that was featured there earlier, you know, the Cliffs of Moher, the last glimpse.
Yeah.
And that is always stuck with me, you know. I always remember him, and as the girls, I said earlier, Nicola and Aoife, like, we would always call him Dada. He was never a granddad or grandfather or anything like that. He was fondly known, like, to all of us by, you know, Dada. And his own family, the sons and the daughters, they'd always refer to him as himself. And I see that, like, as being so respectful, you know. He was just always and himself. And we always called Mary, Mary, not grandma or anything like that either, you know. But do you have any questions you want to ask me about them? Or
No, it's lovely to hear all that, and like it's obvious to anybody who ever visits the house that it has always been an open house, you know, open to grandchildren, children, neighbors, friends, and that there's a kind of a relaxedness there, which is just lovely to walk into. And I'm delighted that you have all those memories, and slightly envious as well.
I know, we're very, very lucky, and you know, he's completely got his memory and his faculties, and he's just so in touch with everything. Reading all the time, and as the girls also said earlier, he can have a conversation with anyone about anything, you know. For someone that's like 100 years old, it's amazing. Like, so it's very proud, and thank you, Paula, for featuring this.
Thanks a million for
you know, on
joining
behalf
in.
of all the family. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thanks, Caroline, for joining
Thank
in.
you. Thank you.
And I don't know if Joe is listening to us tonight, but if you are, Joe, we're sending you all the love, as the young ones say. And if you're not, sure, somebody will give you a chance to listen back to this, and maybe even to look at us all tomorrow or another day. Thanks a million. I have a couple of more pieces. In fact, Caroline, I don't know if you're able to bring up that photograph. I skipped it because, and we went on to, but it's the one I call the marriage collage pic. Are you able to bring that up? I won't be able to see, but if you are, you can show it to people. And if you're not, you can shout at me that you can't do it. Don't know. Okay.
It's up now.
Oh, it is up. Sorry, I just can't see it. So that's just, when I was putting things together today, I kept seeing these lovely photographs of Joe and Mary together. So from memory now, that photograph is just a collage of three. They're standing together as a couple in the 1940s, in the 1970s, and then at their 50th wedding anniversary in the 1990s. Is that the one you're seeing? And I just really liked all of those photographs, and I just wanted to kind of put some sort of a time capsule or a passage of time thing together. But such a fine couple, such a fine couple. Okay, let's move on to the next video that we have now, our audio and photograph. And it's a piece again from Cormac McCarthy's interview with Joe, and it kind of shows his storytelling skills, because he's telling a story about storytellers here. And it is about two storytellers who are competing with each other, one called Donnacha or Dennis McMahon, and the other called Cuimhneamh. That's what I picked up, and I'm afraid I probably haven't transcribed the Irish language version of his name very well, but I used to hear Tom Munley talking about Hugh Clare in Liscannor, and I presume this man, Cuimhneamh, is Hugh Clare's father, because he talks about Danny and Clare and Hugh Clare, but this man that they're talking about here is their father, I think. If I'm wrong about that, I'll ask John Casey to correct me afterwards. But the two men were competing to see who could tell the biggest lie, and Joe Keneally tells that story.
And there was a prize one night to know who could tell the biggest lie. And there was a man over here, district, and Dennis McMahon over here next door. The man in the scanner now was, did you know the Clares? Danny and Judy.
I did.
And Park was better there a while ago. He'd been better hardly 12 months. Danny and Clare. No, Danny, Clare and Judy, their father, Sean and Ahig, they used to have him.
Okay.
He used to have a lot of Irish too. All of them had it at that time. But they touched to know who would go first. Sean and Ahig had the first go. He said he was a mighty fisherman living near the sea, and he was always fishing. He was fishing off the beach line from morning, he said very early. He had an awful long line, and he threw out. And it was after a while, didn't get caught outside somewhere, and he couldn't draw it in. He'd break the line. So he went out along the line, and he found out it was gone down, and he went down along the line. Where was the hook? It was caught in a pot house. There was hanging a pot outside in Kilshanny. That was a village that was drowned off a Lahinch one time. You might have heard that. And he loosened the hook, came up, and was coming in along the line again. And didn't the line break? And as it did, a wave came along, and he sat up on the wave, and it landed him right in where he had the fishing net. That was his story. And from all this man said then that he was an awful industrious farmer. Drawing more up and reclaiming land over there, and he wasn't what had his skills to do anything, you know. But this morning, he got up and he was going to the shore over to the scanner shoot. And weed, the red weed, and you'd have to watch the tide. Go when the tide would be out, sure. And it was freezing terrible hard. And he went out to the bench of hair to cut a goal hair. That'd be a goal hair like that. Probably was a horse. And he had terrible edge in the hair now. And he thought he felt something awful hard, but he cut anyway. And he was taking the goal hair out, what came out, but a man's head on the bench. So he searched and he found the body. He put the body standing up by the rig, and he clapped the head down, and then again it was freezing so hard. It stuck. He said he'd bring him in and give him a supper there before he'd clear him. And he came in, and when he came in the light, and he got one in the head on the wrong way, face back. And he went in, he had him inside in the hog, and the head fall. You know, when he came in, the head and fell down the tape, but it was by the fire. Well, he said he cut him and he brought him outside the door, and he put him standing up outside by the wall, and cut the head and put it on, and he made sure he put it on the right way. He said, this time. And gave him a few hands up in the room, he said, and cleared him and told him not to be seen around here ever again. He was going to, don't know who was going to town the following Tuesday with Bonners. And who did he meet below? The first man he met was this man that he had the head put on, and he bought a pair of Bonners from him. So to see if they got the prize. For the biggest lie.
He won in the end.
Cormac sounds a little bit stunned at the end of that story. Is Cormac still in the room? Can I call you back in, Cormac? Cormac McCarthy did that interview with Joe.
Did hear.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Listen, I heard that story a couple of times over the years, and just listening to it again now, it is just so off the wall. It's fantastic. Um, Tell me a little bit about recording that story with Joe.
What was hilarious about that though was it's like Joe had put himself back into the competition. He was so earnest in how he was saying it, and he was recording it to me with such seriousness. It was nearly like I was in the competition. And now, in fairness, when the head goes on the wrong way, you kind of know, even when you're up against Kilshanny, you know who's lying. But it was just, it's the way that he got so involved in the same way that you're saying about he was a singer first and foremost. I don't know, for me, the way he told stories and he got so invested in the story, like it really was. And I know you said earlier about you were there and you ended up there 4 hours. Like time just passed in a time warp in Keneally's house, but it was the most beautiful time warp. You were there with Joe. You were literally hanging on his every word. And Mary was there, and they were both so welcoming. So it's very nostalgic listening back. It's been a long time now since I'd heard that story, but I'd forgotten just how much he got invested in retelling it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's such a weird and wonderful tale. I love it. Thanks a million, Cormac. I know there's more of Joe's family there as well. Is Lisa there, one of the granddaughters? Would Lisa like to come back in and chat to us a little bit about her granddad and grandmother? Might take Caroline a minute to find you, Lisa, but we'll get to you. I
Can you
don't.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see me. Maybe that's
Oh, I
that's a
can
good thing.
actually. Yeah, I can see you now.
Paula, how are you? Good evening to you and all the people that are tuned in. Absolutely fantastic show. I flew home from work to get it on Zoom.
Good
But,
on you.
going back to Joe, my grandfather in Kilshanny, absolutely wonderful, wonderful memories of a great upbringing up there. Spend all our summers up there, every midterm. My uncle Joe, which is Dada's son, used to do bouncing back in Kilrush. And at 1:30 or 2 in the morning, he'd come home and he'd pick me up on the way back to Kilshanny from my house. And we'd head back to Kilshanny. So we wouldn't get home till about 2:30 in the morning. We'd be straight to bed and up at cockcrow with Dada to bring in the cattle for milking. Great, great memories altogether. Mighty family. We had great times there. Young Joe himself used to bring us up to the creamery. We used to go for the treats. Come back home to God tonight. There were great days. Eileen and Margaret who were up there the whole time, had us spoiled, brought us always sweets from town. And Joe's Dada's sister Nan at the time, who used to go up to mass with the neighbour Holly Canan. She used to come back from mass with the macaroon bars and the TK orange, and it's great. And the orange do a week down the battle by Saturday evening, Sunday evening after mass. But a great man, Joe, a great house. Door was always open. Everyone was always welcome. Great time. Great for story. A great man to educate. And we learned a lot from them. And Mary also. All the family. It was a big house. We used to have 2 tables actually for the dinner. There was a chicken on a Sunday, and I suppose 6 days of the week we'd have the bacon and cabbage, which I love. 6 days a week. But yeah, he's a mighty man. And
Yeah. You're taking me right back there now with the TK and the macaroon bars. That sounds like the perfect kind of grandparents' house to have. Thanks a million for that, Lisa. I'm going to call on Jack Lutz as well. Is Jack around? I know that he wanted to get into the conversation. So if we can find Jack, we'll definitely draw you in. Poor old Caroline has the hard.
How's everyone doing?
Good, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing great. I couldn't help but put some backdrop for when we visited the farm, as we called it. And my grandfather was John Keneally, one of Joe's brothers that was in the picture that you had before. And we learned from sort of the other perspective, being in the US and in Connecticut, we always heard about Ireland and so forth from my grandfather. And we had the pleasure of going back with him. I think it was around 40 years that he had been in the US, to go back for the first time to visit with Joe and Mary and the family and Debbie and Joe Jr. and so forth. So we got to see the reunion firsthand, which was amazing. And then
And Jack,
go ahead.
that photograph that we showed earlier of Joe with his brothers and sisters visiting, that was your dad's first visit back, wasn't it? Or your granddad's first visit back, wasn't it? That's the occasion. Yeah.
That was the occasion, and that story that Joe was telling about, I think you needed a sponsor to come to the US back then. And my grandfather was on the ship on the way over when the aunt was the sponsor that passed away. So arrived in the US without any sponsor, and and that made it even more of a strange situation. But I can't tell you how much fun we've had going back to visit the families. We brought our kids back. My sister Patty's on the phone as well. She's brought her family back, and it's just been wonderful experience.
So is there a big network of you now in the States? Because it was 8 siblings who went out, and would most of those siblings have stayed in touch with each other and their families stayed in touch?
Yeah. So Tom, I think Debbie and Eileen Keneally are on the phone. So Tom Keneally was in Torrington, Connecticut. And then we had Peg Brady and May Keneally, who were in New Jersey, and so forth. And it was great when everyone got together, and it was just like old times.
And this might be too specific a question now, Jack, but the very first song that we heard about My Sweet County Clare, which was the video of Joe, I think it was, oh no, I'm wrong. It was one of his uncles that wrote that song. Sorry, I thought it was maybe one of his brothers. No, I'm wrong. It was the next generation back, that one of them that had written that song.
Yeah, my grandfather was not as much of a singer as Joe, but he loved a few songs. And one I know he used to sing all the time, although I don't profess to know the words or the background. I was young, but was called The Jolly Tinker. But from my understanding, that was rated more PG-13 than general audiences. So we'll see.
You can get away with that with folk songs, though. You can put all sorts of stuff in.
Yeah. But thank you. This is a great presentation. Really appreciate it.
Jack, thanks so much for participating. It's the participation of the family that really makes it. I mean, we're thrilled to bring the recordings to you, but the fact that you've linked in with us from all over the world and all around County Clare, that's what makes this really special. So we're really grateful to you. I think I am going to go to the final piece that we have for you tonight. I know Linda's trying to get through to me here with more messages, so we'll take more messages after this. But for now, this is a piece where Joe, I think I did have a piece earlier where he was talking about how he learned songs. And you had that thing of him walking home from his aunt's house at night, opening the frock, as he called it. It took me ages to figure out what that was. That's actually the coat. So he was opening the inside of the coat where he had the words of the song written and put them in to protect them from the rain and so on. But as part of that interview, he also talked about the house dances. So the singing was at the end of the house dances, but he talked about the dances generally. So we're going to listen to him now talking about that. And the photograph that you're going to see is the photograph of the original house that Joe and his siblings were born and raised in.
If there were a dance every night of the week, we'd be gone. And we wouldn't go to bed and we'd come home either. As we were there, we often did 4 or 5 nights and hardly any sleep. You would have to toe the line in the morning. Just take off the clothes and get into the outfit for work. Oh, that for sure.
Cows had to be milked one way or the other.
Oh, yes, and out in and out working. Out working. Oh, it wouldn't be hard to stay in bed in the morning.
And would there have been a lot of house dances around
They
here?
used. We weren't going to hall dances. We never went to hall dances. I think about once or twice in my whole life. Never. Just the money was very scarce. But through all country dances, that could be a dance that time for 9pence maybe. Kind of benefit people who were poor, benefit dances. And there'd be a gambling a dance. And that dance would go on until 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. Every dance would go on to that hour. Some would go home early, and I weren't the best for going home early anyway.
Would they have been on special occasions, or would they have been?
No, they could come up at any time in the world. They could come at any time. There'd be soirees, sure. And there'd be ring dances then. The soirees, you see, you'd collect money, supporting maybe 5 bob if we were drinking. There'd be a half barrel brought. And there'd be a lot of minerals and what they used to call grinders at that time and jam. There'd be great nights, sure. Great nights.
What was the grinder?
It was the baker's bread now with the grinder, they used to call it. I know you could. Did you ever remember them, Paddy?
I think I do.
There used to be so many were stuck together and you could pull out.
Yeah.
And you'd have a loaf here and a loaf here and they're kind of be joined in a minute. Not a loaf, but it'd be only about that thickness, you know. Oh, they were grand. Well, everything was grand that time because the appetite was good and the money is shares. That's just what it was there.
And it would have been in people's kitchens, like this kind
In
of
the kitchen, yeah. And there'd be a plank in there and a plank above and a plank here. And there'd be a crowd going up on the floor dancing, a crowd standing up around. Oh, that was it.
So you'd probably get one set is what you'd get on the floor, is it?
Some houses would be order kept and they'd be letting no more than 6 lit up anyway. And but for that, there'd be 9 or 10 maybe crushing around and dancing, they'd be walking around.
I love his turn of phrase, pucking around. Isn't dancing they'd be, but pucking around. And what was the other thing that he said to me? And I thought it would be a brilliant title for an album for a singer. I think it was something like, I'm never done samming. And I just thought it's such archaic language and such modern language at the same time. He just had a wonderful turn of phrase, whether he was talking or whether he's singing. Joe is great. Now, can I call Linda, because there may very well be other people who want to join in the chat, and I know Linda has been keeping an eye on the chat. So Linda, would you step forward maybe if you have any messages that people are trying to get through to us?
Just a message there from Caroline Lavin. So, hi everyone. My mum Eileen Lavin is Joe's niece. She's online this evening, and several of us, Joe's grandnieces, are too. Fantastic show. I have fond memories of visiting Joe and Mary over the years. I think we can all attest to the very welcoming house Keneally's having landed down unannounced many's the time from Sligo. And it was never a short visit. So we don't even have a short visit nowadays. Anyway, that's the message there.
Lovely. Thanks a million, Linda. Caroline, can I ask you, there was another picture. Did I skip it as well? The one, I want to go back to the one of Tess Casey and Joe. So Tess is John and Breed's grandchild, and there's a nice photo of her sitting beside Joe. She's about, I'd say, 5 or 6 years of age, maybe a little bit more, and Joe is singing. I'd love if people could see that, because it's a kind of a visual representation of what all the grandchildren have been saying tonight. Are you able to show that, Caroline? Sorry for asking you now.
Yeah, it's on the screen now.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'm the only one who can't see the screen. Okay, so that is, those are actually just screen grabs from videos that John was taking. So they're a little bit fuzzy, but I think that you can see, you know, they kind of transmit the emotion, don't they? Like, she's really taken with him, he's really taken with her, and then he throws the head back and sings, and she's just really into it. And I think all the grandchildren, grandnieces and grandnephews who talked tonight, just ye exude that same feeling. So I just want to do a couple of thank yous, and if anybody does want to step in after that, please feel free. Linda's looking at the chat and Caroline's controlling the meeting. I'm just a spectator at this stage, but I wanted to say a couple of thank yous tonight. Firstly to Siobhan Butler, who was a huge help to me in making the poster. We've some new volunteers on board in the last number of months, and I have found people with digital skills, and you've no idea how happy I am. So thanks a million, Siobhan, for doing that. To Fiona O'Connell, who played a blinder today, because we have audio in the archive, but to do a presentation online with Zoom or to do anything on social media, you have to make videos, and you have to subtitle them now for kind of ease of access. So that's quite a bit of work, and I had Fiona beavering away with me over the last couple of days. So you have her to thank for all that clarity in the videos, and I'm really, really grateful to her for that. To Francis Madigan and to Cormac McCarthy, the collectors for Cuimhneamh and Chláir, for giving us the pleasure of listening back to Joe's voice 10 years and more after you did those interviews. John Casey, who has donated those gorgeous videos as well. Jim Carroll, who helped me with access to songs. The National Folklore Archive and Christopher McCormick for permission to play those wonderful recordings of Joe as a young singer. Clare County Library, who are the sponsors of History Week, and there's some wonderful events on for the rest of the week, and I'd encourage you to go onto the Clare County Library's website and take a look at those. And in particular, actually, there's a great composition, a new piece of music by Tim Collins, which takes its inspiration from the women of 1921. So interviews with women who witnessed or can tell secondhand stories of the War of Independence, and Tim has made a new piece of music around those voices. That's a really special thing for History Week, and we'd love you to follow that up as well and take a listen to it. Clare County Council generally, because they're our sponsors, without whom we'd have done nothing for the last 12 years. And then finally, a little piece of news. Cuimhneamh and Chláir will be launching its first ever podcast series. So very shortly, not trying to create suspense or anything, but we will pick a date for the launch very shortly, and you will be able to get the Clare Oral History podcast, stick it in your ears and walk around wherever you are, Australia, America, Kilshanny or Fecal, and enjoy that. So we'd love if you would follow us on Facebook, and we will shortly have an Instagram page, and we'll have the podcast details and all of that. So we'd love if you would connect with us to follow our work. And again, thanks a million to all of you again for making this night what it really is, because the archive is great, but people's stories live and in the moment are even greater. So thanks a million, everybody. And I'm going to hand over, I think it's to Francis, to just say a final couple of words. Francis Madigan, that is, one of the collectors tonight.
Hi there. Thanks a million, Paula, there for a wonderful presentation. But my thank yous tonight, the main one would be to Joe himself for his generosity in sharing his wonderful repository of stories, wisdom, lore, traditional skills, the whole lot. He shared them very willingly to anybody who came to visit or to record or whatever, just for a chat. You had that welcome, and it just flowed from him. As you'll hear from the interviews, a lot of the time you wouldn't have to ask too many questions because he'd keep going or burst into a song or whatever. And in his own very quiet way and unassuming but confident, he shared all that with us. And to Mary, the late Mary, who welcomed us with the same generosity and as Joe did. And nobody ever left the house without something. So her generosity knew no bounds. And I'm glad to say that we all have some contributions as well in the interviews from Mary, and they're wonderful to have. It added another dimension to all those interviews. To Joe Jr. and his family for helping us at all times with our visits and with organising tonight's event, with sharing family photos and family lore. And, you know, it's wonderful to see such a family come together to pay tribute to Joe. I'm getting emotional myself here talking about this, but it was a privilege to record him, and we are blessed to have him still with us. And I think, Paula, you have said the thank yous to all the people who need to be thanked, but now I'm going to say thank you to yourself, because only you could put together a presentation like this. And your mutual interest in song and story and your own wonderful talent as a presenter, producer. So thank you for a great presentation, Paula. So on behalf of Cuimhneamh and Chláir, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us. And it's so wonderful that, I mean, we have a global audience tonight, and that this just shows what an event like this and what a man like Joe can do, and what can be spread from having an archive of memories of people like Joe. So thanks to all on behalf of Cuimhneamh and Chláir.
Thanks a million, Francis. I think you've said everything there that needs to be said. So unless I see anybody, and I can't see anyone at all, madly waving their hands, I think we could probably wrap up for the evening. Linda, you let me know if there's anybody else who wants to come in. Otherwise, I bid you all a very good night, and thanks for joining us.